An easy target. Stay tuned until the end to uncover the surprising twist this confrontation takes. This is one you won't want to miss. The lively streets of New York were beginning to settle as the day's energy faded, but for Keanu Reeves, the night was just beginning. Stepping out of the movie studio, Keanu inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp evening air of the city. His outfit was carefully unremarkable, torn jeans that had clearly seen better days, a well-loved denim jacket that hung loosely on him, and a faded baseball cap pulled low over his brow. This choice of attire wasn't random. It allowed him to blend into the crowd, avoiding the spotlight that came with his celebrity status. Beside him, happily trotting along on a leash, was Andy, a beagle puppy with floppy ears and soulful eyes. Andy wasn't just any dog. He'd been assigned to Keanu by the film's animal trainer to help them bond before filming their scenes together for John Wick. Keanu had been allowed to take Andy home temporarily, a short-term arrangement that was already proving to be more significant than he'd expected. As they strolled, Keanu found himself grinning at the way Andy's tail wagged enthusiastically at each new smell or sight. Despite their brief time together, a genuine connection had already formed between the actor and the pup. Andy's trusting gaze tugged at Keanu's heart, sparking a sense of responsibility that extended far beyond professional obligations. Their route took them toward the 14th Street Union Square subway station. The late-night crowd was sparse as they descended the steps into the underground network. The fluorescent lights cast stark shadows across the concrete walls, creating a sharp divide between the bustling city above and the quieter world below. The rhythmic echo of footsteps and the distant rumble of trains set the tone for their journey. As they ventured deeper into the station, they passed a storage alcove known to shelter a small homeless community. Makeshift tents and shelters lined the walls, a stark reminder of the city's inequities. While the few remaining commuters in business attire hurried past with averted eyes or muttered dismissively, Keanu maintained his nightly ritual. Andy patiently waited by his side as Keanu approached the individuals living there, offering coins or small bills to each person he encountered. "Here you go," Keanu murmured to an elderly woman huddled beneath a tattered blanket. She looked up, her weathered face lighting up with a grateful smile. "God bless you, young man," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Keanu nodded and continued on, never seeking recognition or praise. Most of the time, people didn't even realize who he was. This was simply his way of acknowledging the humanity of those whom society often overlooked. Andy's presence, meanwhile, drew curious glances and occasional smiles from the homeless individuals. His innocent enthusiasm brought brief moments of levity to the somber atmosphere. Keanu couldn't help but reflect on the stark contrast between his life and theirs. The disparity weighed heavily on him, and though his small gestures couldn't address the systemic issues at play, he hoped they might bring a fleeting sense of comfort to someone in need. As they approached a familiar tent near the end of the alcove, Keanu noticed something was off. The spot usually belonged to Max, a homeless man he'd spoken to several times before. Max was known for his upbeat nature and constant companion, a tiny chihuahua named Button. Tonight, though, there was only an eerie silence. "Max," Keanu called softly, concern edging into his voice. "Are you there?" After a tense pause, the tent's flap rustled, and Max emerged. The sight of him made Keanu's heart sink. Max's face bore fresh bruises, a nasty one blooming near his temple, and his eyes carried a haunting sadness. "Oh, hey, Keanu," Max mumbled, his voice barely audible. He attempted a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Keanu crouched to meet him at eye level. "Max, what happened? Are you okay?" His gaze swept the area, noticing the absence of the usual energetic yapping that accompanied Max. "Where's Buttons?" At the mention of Button, Max's composure crumbled. Shoulders slumping, he buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, tears filled his eyes. "They took her," Max choked out. "Those bastards took my Button." Two of the men casually swung their baseball bats, the implied threat clear as they approached. As they drew nearer, Keanu caught a whiff of alcohol on their breath. Well, sneered the tallest of the group. Looks like we've got ourselves a new hobo in town. Keanu kept his composure, his tone steady. I'm just waiting for my train. The bold thug laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the empty platform. Oh, we've heard that one before. Who do you think you are? A celebrity. The shortest man, stocky and intimidating, chimed in. No celebrity would dress like that. Stop fooling around and hand over the cash. Realizing the danger, Keanu stayed calm, attempting to reason with them. There's a misunderstanding here. I'm not homeless. I'm just... Before he could finish, the tallest thug stepped closer, invading his personal space. We don't care what you are, he spat. Look at us. I'm Bowie. That's Will, and here's Connie. This is our territory. You pay to be here. The tension mounted as Keanu felt anger, concern for Andy, and the grim reality of his predicament intertwine. What had once been a mundane wait for a train had turned into a threatening standoff. Despite Keanu's attempts to explain, the three men grew more aggressive. I've told you, I'm not homeless, Keanu repeated firmly. I'm just waiting for my train. Will sneered. Yeah. Empty your pockets, tough guy. Slowly, Keanu reached into his pockets, pulling out his worn leather wallet. He held it out, hoping to de-escalate the situation. Will snatched it, flipping through with a frown. $20? That's it. Disgusted, he threw it back at Keanu. As Keanu caught the wallet, Bowie's eyes zeroed in on something else. Well, what do we have here? He grabbed at Keanu's neck. For a moment, Keanu thought he was going to be strangled, but instead, he felt the sharp tug of his necklace being yanked away. The chain snapped, and Keanu watched in dismay as the thug held up the precious family heirloom. Hey, that's my family's. Keanu protested, his voice slipping from calm to pleading. It's worthless to you, but means everything to me. Will's cruel laugh echoed in the station. Oh, I think it's worth plenty. What's the matter? No family left to care for you? That's why you're here all alone with a dog, isn't it? The cruel jab stung. Not for its truth, but for its malice. Anger surged, and Keanu grabbed for the necklace. Give it back, he demanded, his voice dangerously low. For a moment, they wrestled for the chain. Then, Connie shoved Keanu, sending him stumbling. Regaining his balance, Keanu found himself face-to-face with a baseball bat. Connie gripped it menacingly. Try that again, and you'll regret it, he growled. Keanu's mind raced for a way out without risking himself or Andy. But the thugs had other plans. Bowie turned his attention to Andy with a malicious grin. He spat on the puppy before knocking Keanu's coffee over, spilling it onto the dog. Andy yelped in discomfort, and Keanu snapped. He lunged forward to shield Andy, but the frightened pup slipped free. Barking furiously, Andy ran after the retreating thugs. No, Andy. Keanu called desperately, chasing after the dog. His fingers caught the leash just in time, but relief was short-lived. The thugs closed in. Andy, in a brave but misguided attempt to protect Keanu, bit down on Bowie's boot. Looks like your mutt needs a lesson, Will snarled, reaching for the leash. Keanu tried to hold on, but the thugs overpowered him. With a violent yank, they tore the leash from his grip. Andy's muffled whimpers echoed in the station as the thugs restrained the puppy, strapping his muzzle shut with a belt, a chilling echo of Button's fate. Keanu pleaded, Please, he's not even my dog. You don't understand. Connie raised his bat. I've cracked plenty of skulls. Don't think I won't do the same to you. Helpless, Keanu could only watch as the thugs disappeared into the shadows, taking Andy with them. Left alone, the weight of his failure bore down on Keanu. They hadn't just stolen a necklace and a dog, they'd taken his faith in humanity. But as despair threatened to consume him, Keanu made a silent vow. He would find Andy, no matter what. With renewed determination, he ignored the arriving train and the curious stares of passengers. Keanu sprinted into the maze of tunnels, his focus unwavering. Andy's fate depended on him. Mr. Reeves, the first officer, spoke with a voice now dripping with insincere concern. We had no idea. How can we help? The fan, realizing something serious was unfolding, began recording the situation with her phone. Noticing this, the officers hurriedly ushered her away, their earlier prejudice now replaced by evident embarrassment. Keanu felt a storm of emotions: anger at the officers' initial apathy, frustration over the wasted time, and a grim satisfaction watching their discomfort now that they understood their mistake. However, what stood out the most was the growing urgency within him. Every passing minute meant Andy was in greater danger. The officers, eager to make amends, asked Keanu which way the thugs had gone, but he knew it was too late. They had disappeared into the night. Keanu glanced at the officers, their earlier disdain still fresh in his memory, and made a decision. Shaking his head, he rejected their delayed offer of assistance. His voice was calm, yet carried a sharp edge as he said, "When I first came to you, I was just another person in need. Your job is to protect and serve everyone, not just those you deem worthy of your time." The officers shifted uneasily, shame evident on their faces. What if I had been seriously hurt? What if every second mattered? Keanu continued, "You can never know the urgency of a situation just by someone's appearance." His words hung heavy in the air, leaving the officers thoroughly chastened. They promised to alert their colleagues and keep an eye out for the thugs and the dog. Keanu provided descriptions of both Andy and the men, but walked away with his disgust at their earlier behavior clearly visible. As Keanu left the embarrassed officers behind, his emotions remained a complex mix: anger at the injustice he'd faced, worry for Andy's safety, and an increasing awareness of the struggles faced by societies less fortunate. The night had revealed a side of the city he'd never truly seen before, and he couldn't ignore it. Determined to find Andy and ensure his safety, Keanu pressed on despite exhaustion creeping into his bones. Standing on the train platform, he watched the trains come and go, the events of the night weighing heavily on him. Each passing minute amplified his worry for Andy's safety. He found himself at a crossroads. Should he continue his seemingly futile search or board the next train home? Logic urged him to return home, rest, and file a formal report at the police station in the morning. He dreaded the inevitable conversation with the director and animal trainer about Andy's disappearance, the potential impact on the production schedule, and the possible violations of animal welfare regulations. As another train pulled into the station, Keanu stepped forward, his decision made. He would go home, regroup, and tackle the problem with fresh eyes. Despite his frustration with the officers' earlier behavior, a small part of him hoped they might come through with information about Andy or the stolen necklace. Just as the train doors opened and passengers began to exit, a familiar voice called out, cutting through the ambient noise of the station. "Keanu! Keanu, wait!" Turning, Keanu saw Max running toward him, his face flushed with urgency. Keanu was filled with surprise and curiosity. "Max, what's going on?" he asked as the homeless man, breathless from running, reached him. Between gasps, Max said, "I know where the thugs are." Keanu's heart leapt. "What? How do you know?" Max straightened, his eyes shining with a determination that hadn't been there earlier. "Word travels fast in our community. A few people saw them harassing you and told me. I knew I had to find you." As the train doors closed behind them, Keanu's focus shifted entirely to Max, a new sense of hope kindling in his chest. "Do you know where Andy is?" Keanu asked urgently. Max shook his head. "Not exactly, but I know where those greedy jackals usually gather at this hour. If we hurry, we might catch them before they do something to your dog." The certainty in Max's voice, born from experience, left no room for doubt. "Lead the way," Keanu said, his resolve renewed. Now, with a sense of unity and accomplishment in the air, an older man with a gray beard stepped forward. Extending his hand to Keanu, he introduced himself. "Name's George," he said, his voice gravelly yet warm. "What you did tonight, standing up to those thugs, it means a lot to us. They've been terrorizing this area for months." Keanu grasped George's hand firmly. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," he replied, genuine gratitude evident in his tone. "The way you all came together, it was incredible." A woman in her 50s, wrapped in a worn coat, spoke up. "That's what friends do for each other," she said simply. And now, thanks to you, we won't have to worry about being robbed again. The camaraderie in the group was undeniable, a stark contrast to the fear and isolation that had gripped the community earlier that evening. As Keanu looked at the faces of those who had stood beside him, he felt a deep sense of connection to this neighborhood he had only briefly interacted with before. Max, who had been watching silently, suddenly spoke. What about Button and Andy? How do we get them back? We're on it, Bobby assured him. Turner's calling in some favors to secure an emergency warrant. We can't leave those animals in danger any longer. This trafficking operation can't continue. Keanu nodded with relief. Thank you, he said sincerely. After a tense few minutes, Turner ended his call, a look of satisfaction spreading across his face. Got it. Judge Hernandez is sending over the warrant now. We move as soon as it comes through. The next 30 minutes were a whirlwind. Additional police units arrived, and Keanu watched as officers coordinated efficiently for the operation. The captured thugs were secured in police vehicles for later processing. Finally, Turner's phone buzzed. The warrant had arrived. All right, people, let's move out, Turner commanded. Before leaving, Keanu turned to the homeless community that had stood by him. Thank you all, he said earnestly. What you did tonight, it means more than you know. With a final nod of gratitude, Keanu and Max joined the officers, heading toward Pet Haven. When they arrived, the street was eerily quiet, the store's closed sign hanging in the window. But as they approached, Keanu noticed a faint light emanating from the back. Looks like someone's still inside, Officer Bobby murmured. The officers swiftly positioned themselves around the entrance. Turner stepped forward, his voice authoritative in the stillness. This is the NYPD. We have a warrant to search these premises. Open the door immediately. For a moment, silence prevailed. Then came the sound of shuffling inside. The light in the back grew brighter as footsteps approached the front. The door creaked open, revealing a nervous-looking middle-aged man. What's going on? He asked, his voice unsteady. Sir, we have a warrant to search your store, Turner stated, showing the digital document on his phone. We suspect you're in possession of stolen animals. The man's face turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. All our animals are legally sourced. Keanu stepped forward, his gaze locked on the man. That beagle, he said, pointing to Andy. It was entrusted to me by a film studio. And that chihuahua belongs to my friend. Both were stolen tonight. As officers methodically built their case, the owner's protests faltered. The investigation uncovered a troubling pattern of dealings with stolen animals. Look, the owner finally admitted, his voice trembling. I just buy from suppliers. I don't ask where they get the animals. You should, Max interjected, his voice heavy with emotion. These aren't just products. They're living beings, loved by the people who care for them. While officers documented evidence and took photographs, Keanu and Max were finally allowed to reclaim Andy and Button. The moment their cages were opened, the dogs bolted out, tails wagging furiously. Andy leaped into Keanu's arms, showering him with enthusiastic licks. Keanu held him close, murmuring, "You're safe now, buddy." Beside him, Max knelt, clutching Button to his chest. Tears streaked his weathered cheeks as he stroked the tiny chihuahua's fur. Button's joyous yips filled the air, a sound of healing after their harrowing separation. As the preliminary investigation concluded, Officer Turner addressed them. "You're free to go," he said. "We'll need your statements tomorrow, but for now, take these little ones home." Keanu nodded gratefully. "Thank you for everything," he said sincerely. With their dogs trotting happily beside them, Keanu and Max left the store. The night air felt fresher, filled with the promise of new beginnings. The streets of Union Square glowed softly under the streetlights, the bustling daytime crowds replaced by a serene calm. As they walked, Keanu opened up about his work with local homeless foundations. "You know, Max," he began thoughtfully, "I've been involved with organizations that help the homeless, but tonight has shown me I need to do more." Max nodded, his gaze fixed ahead. "It's a hard life out here," he said quietly. "Most people don't get it." Keanu's words quickened as ideas formed. "There are programs, food, shelter, medical care, job training. Things that could make a real difference. I want to connect you and others in the community with these resources. Max slowed his pace, turning to Keanu. His eyes held a mix of hope and hesitation. Job training, huh? He said wistfully. I've tried finding work before, but people judge you for how you look, where you live. That's exactly what these programs address, Keanu explained. They partner with employers willing to give people a fair chance. Keanu suddenly stopped, pulling out his wallet. He ducked into a nearby convenience store and returned moments later with a small package. Here, he said, handing it to Max, a prepaid phone. My assistant will call you tomorrow to get things started. Max stared at the phone, disbelief etched on his face. Keanu, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Keanu replied, resting a hand on Max's shoulder. Just promise me you'll answer when it rings. Max nodded, a smile breaking through. I promise, he said, his voice thick with emotion. At the subway station where their journey had begun, they paused. This is where we part ways for now, Keanu said. But this isn't goodbye, Max. It's a new beginning. Thank you for everything, Max replied, clutching button close. As the subway doors closed, Keanu glanced back, making a phone gesture as a reminder. Max smiled, holding up the phone in acknowledgement. On the train, Andy curled at Keanu's feet, wagging his tail as if to say, "We did good tonight." Keanu smiled, feeling a profound sense of purpose. The night had been transformative, not just for him, but for the community he now felt deeply connected to. As the train sped through the city, Keanu knew this was only the beginning of something much greater.